Tomorrow is Europe's D-Day. Will its politicians, in solemn conclave, face reality or go away confirming their daftness and even delirium? They have to decide whether to go ahead with the proposed ban on the export to Britain of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine made in the Netherlands regardless of the company's contractual obligations. If they do, they will prove conclusively that the EU is in a delirious state. After all, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron, among others, have first rubbished the vaccine and then conducted such a comprehensive U-turn that they want to hoard supplies. Yet all the while millions of doses are lying unused in their fridges because they have poisoned their citizens' minds against it. If that is not evidence of delirium, I'm a Hottentot. Talk about cutting off your nose to spite your face. A decision to block exports to the UK will only put off foreign companies from investing in Europe since they will see the EU dictatorship is prepared to override legal contracts. Just like that, the EU has got itself into such a muddle and mess that there must be serious doubts whether its delirium is terminal. Let me itemize what is wrong with it apart from the usual complaints about its bureaucracy, democratic deficiency, protectionism, corruption and pretentiousness. First, it is effectively run by the Franco-German Axis who more or less hold the thing together with bribes, that is grants to the lesser fry. But Mrs. Merkel is on her way out with no obvious successor and Macron's days may well be numbered. His potential successor, Marine Le Pen, is no admirer of the EU. Is Frexit on the cards if she wins next year's election? There are persistent reports of gathering support for secession in both France and Germany. What is the point of a central, unelected bureaucracy in Brussels pledged to develop a European superstate if it cannot look after the interests of the 450 million people living in its constituent nations? The question also arises over defense and foreign policy. Its weakness in this area is not new. In my 17 years of close encounters with the EU up to 1990 we could never rely on its constancy or observance of collective decisions, not to mention its member states' failure to pay their whack towards the upkeep of NATO, the real guarantor of European freedom. Latterly Macron has been leading the charge for a European army that should put the fear of God into the Kremlin, bearing in mind reports that Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Merkel's puppet, left the German army parading like our home guard with broomsticks instead of rifles. Greece, Italy and Spain must often have wondered why they are still in the EU when its single currency, a federal instrument, has left them effectively bankrupt. Remainers will argue that our moral responsibility, as members of the EU, was to provide a counterweight to the Franco-German Axis. It would be a respectable argument if we had had the slightest effect on their federalist drive since Margaret Thatcher warned them in Bruges in 1988 they were on the wrong track. So what should Europe's leaders do tomorrow? First, they should show they are not as daft as they now look by ending threats to block vaccine trade and pledging to do their utmost to get Europe immunized with a variety of vaccines. If they fail to take up Boris Johnson's magnanimous offer to share Netherlands' production of the AstraZeneca vaccine 50-50, it will prove conclusively that Britain has a monopoly on statesmanship. Second, and this will be more difficult, they should launch a top-level inquiry into what is wrong with the long-established model for European development. How can they best reunify a fragmenting EU, recognizing that individual nations will in extremis bow to their electors, as we have seen in closing borders long before the scramble for vaccines. A searching inquiry into the current structure, Ministerial Council, European Assembly, Parliament, and Commission, is not merely necessary in the light of its performance, it is also urgent. Europe's disarray and weakness must be sorely tempting Russia to indulge in a bit more empire building in Eastern Europe or like Crimea. Responsible politicians in Europe owe it to the West, indeed the cause of freedom, to sort themselves out on a lasting basis while getting control of COVID-19. This is no time for kicking cans down the road. Action this day. Really responsible politicians would start canvassing the idea of a looser Europe of nation states freely and enthusiastically working together for a better world. Mrs. Thatcher advocated precisely that 32 years ago. Can Boris Johnson belatedly lead them to that land of promise, or has federalism gone too far? I wish I felt optimistic that Europe will tomorrow at last grasp the nettle of its failed system.